All righty. So we'll find our way to Romans chapter number 2 tonight. And we're going to hit two more of these kind of arguments, I guess, and then we're going to get into something a bit more fun towards the second half and tail end of this thing here tonight. I told you it was coming as we've been dealing with these proofs of God, and we've looked at some big words and some different beliefs and a lot of things. And honestly, we've just been chugging right on along through it. And then here tonight, we'll hit something there towards the end that I'm excited about getting to, and I believe it might pep us up just a little bit. Things have been a bit teachy here lately, but maybe tonight they'll get a little bit preachy. So we're looking forward to that. As far as Romans chapter number 2 goes, we'll begin our reading in verse, let's go down here to verse number, let's do number 12. Verse number 12. Let's see. For as many as have sinned without law shall also perish without law. And as many as have sinned in the law shall be judged by the law. For not the hearers of the law are just before God, but the doers of the law shall be justified. Remember that verse there, key verse number 13. The hearers of the law, not just those that hear it. Just because you heard it don't mean that you're just before God, but it's the ones that do it. Not the hearers of the law are just before God, but the doers of the law shall be justified. So he's talking about those that hear versus those that do the law. And then in verse number 14, thank you, sir. Verse number 14, it goes on to say, for when the Gentiles, that would be me and you, that's anybody that is not of a Jewish bloodline, they're anybody that does not belong to the children or the family that comes down from Abraham through Isaac and through Jacob there in the 12 tribes. For when the Gentiles, which have not the law, do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law or a law unto themselves, which show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts the mean, while accusing or else excusing one another. And I know that gets kind of deep real quick. It's not like you got to go to the shallow end and walk down the slope. It's like you got pushed off the side of the pool straight into the middle of verse number 14 and 15 there. So it gets a little bit deep, but it ties into what we're talking about tonight. And let me try to help us understand here. In verse number 14, the Gentiles, so that's us, not the Jews, which have not the law. Now, what was the law? The law was what was given unto the Jewish Hebrew people back when they got the book of Leviticus, back when Moses went up on Sinai and the Lord began to tell him all of the different things to do and all the laws for them to follow. When he came back down and eventually Aaron was going to become the high priest, that's the law that they're talking about there. It's the law that was given unto the Jews. Today they call it the Torah. They call the Torah, the law there that they were given. It was not given to the Gentiles. God, when He sent Moses the Ten Commandments and the rest of all of the book of Leviticus there, He didn't send it off to everybody else. He didn't send it to the Ammonites or Amalekites. He didn't send it to the Philistines. He didn't send it to the European folks that would eventually come about. He sent the law there to the Jewish nation there. He sent it straight unto the family and the children of Abraham. So the Gentiles which have not the law, we don't have the law tonight. The Gentiles, anybody that is not a Jew tonight, we don't have the law. The law was not given unto us. We're not holding by the law. It has not been given unto us. Now it says the Gentiles that don't have the law do by nature the things contained in the law. It says they don't have it. They weren't given the law. Can we pretend tonight that this is the book of Leviticus? So what that is saying here is, who wants to be a Jew tonight? You want to be a Jew? Trey's going to be a Jew tonight. It's saying that God took the book of Leviticus, He gave it to the Jew. But unto the Gentile, He did not give the law. He did not give the law to them. Now the Gentile, by their own nature, by their own thoughts, by their own heart, by their own moral code or conscience they have, they still did the same things in the law, even though they did not have the law. That's what he's talking about right there. The Gentiles were not given the law, but even in their own hearts, in their own minds, by their own nature, they still did the law. What's one thing that was given unto the Jew on Mount Sinai that we all follow, whether we're a Jew or not? The Ten Commandments, right? Just because I'm not a Jew tonight does not mean that I'm not going to listen to the Ten Commandments. Whatever you believe tonight, it's still not right to steal. It's still not right to go kill somebody. It don't matter if you're a Jew or a Gentile or anything in between or out of there. It's not right to do that. So even though the law was not given unto us, we still know better than to do it. He says the Gentiles that have not been given the law do by nature the things contained in the law. These, having not the law, are a law unto themselves, which show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts the mean, while accusing or else excusing one another. What he is saying here in the text, and Paul deals with this quite often, he even deals with it talking about circumcision as well along the same lines. He's trying to point out to these people that he's writing to here, just because you are a Jew does not mean you are any better than anybody else, does not mean that you are just if you're not following the law. You still got to follow the law. Just being a Jew is not enough. And he points out the Gentile here, and he says, look at the Gentile, for instance. They don't have the law, but they still are doing better. They're still doing right. They're still living the way they're supposed to, and without even knowing it, they're still following the law inside of that. Maybe I could put it to you this way. Maybe us men will understand this. It's Christmas Eve, and you've got to put together one of your toys for your youngins. Y'all remember those days? Seemed like you never got done with family Christmas until 11 o'clock at night, and you had to stay up half the night, put everything together. Yep, I remember those nights. I'm right smack dab in the middle of them. But just for instance, you've got this big, massive toy that you've got to put together. And all of us men, we have something that comes in the box called what? Instructions. And all of us men look at the instructions and we follow every single step to a T. Right? No. Us men look at instructions and the way the little stigma goes on that, we look at the instructions and we're like, nobody need them things. Nobody need the instructions. Look at the picture. I can build it based off the picture. I know in my mind how that's supposed to look, so I can build it according to those instructions without looking at those instructions. We ever done that before? I have. And then sometimes I get to go back and fix it a little bit later on because I guessed wrong. But us men, as we are putting together something, because we already know what's in the instructions without even looking at them, so we do it by ourselves, that's what Paul is talking about here in the book of Romans. He says the Gentiles don't have the instructions, they don't have the law, but they're already doing the things that are inside of the law. They're already following the instructions even without having them. Now, this is going to tie in here in just a minute, okay? I didn't want to leave that on the ground. I'd probably trip on it in a minute. But he says they do by nature, their own nature. And then it goes on in verse 15 and says, the work of the law which is written in their hearts. So he's saying here, even though they do not have the law, it's already their own moral code. It's already their own belief. It's already their own actions. They've got it written in their heart. That's just who they are already, without even being told, without even seeing the law there. They're already listening and carrying out the things of the law. Now let's jump into our notes here. You'll find here the doctrine of God. We're going to look at this last little proof here, or one of these proofs, I guess, and then we're going to get into something else here in just a minute. But the number one there on your notes is the human soul. The human life here proves the existence of God. And it's going to tie in with Romans 2, 14 and 15 right here. So the very soul, our very nature, helps prove the existence of God. So the human soul, and then A on your notes there, that second blank, is the psychological argument. A psychological argument. The basis of this argument can be summed up as since mankind at their very core expects there to be a higher being, that there must be one. One must exist. Because you look in Romans 2 here, they did not know the law. They did not know what was right. They had not been instructed. They had not been told anything according to the law. But for some reason, the very nature of man, the very heart of man, already knew what they needed to do and what they did not need to do. The very heart of man tonight already knows that there is something that is bigger, more powerful, greater, and smarter than we are. We already know it. There's no way to dodge it. No matter what religion or camp people find themselves in, you cannot escape the reality that there is something or someone that is greater than us, and that is God. Let me give you some examples. Even this non-theistic, or people that do not even believe in God at all, still believe in something that is greater than mankind. Your little third blank there ought to be a pretty easy one. I left you a key in that thing there. Blank seeks after enlightenment or nirvana through the teachings of Buddha. What religion is that? Buddhism. Buddhism. I didn't realize that until I already printed my notes off, but I just gave y'all a freebie there. All you had to do was read the rest of it. Buddhism. Buddhism is seeking after enlightenment because to them, even though they do not believe in God, there's still something bigger and greater than what they are. There's still a place of nirvana. There's still a state of enlightenment. There's still something above them that they are trying to get to. In the very nature, the very psychological aspect of it, the very basis of their mind and their heart, they already know that what is down here on this earth, what we can see and what we can do and interact with is not all there is. There is something else. There's something bigger and greater in their own mind. Buddhism falls into that. The second one is Jainism. Jainism. They believe in reaching perfection through ethical living. Well, what's above them? They might not believe in God, but they believe that everybody's actions and the way that they carry themselves and the ethics that they have make them get to another plane. There's something bigger and better than them. They still are caught up in the same idea. That third one there, Confucianism. I took mercy and didn't put you a blank on that one because I couldn't spell it either. Confucianism. It focuses on human morality, social harmony, and ancestor reference. What is it? There's something bigger than where they live. There's something above them. They can realize that. The next one, Taoism. Taoism is D-A-O-ism. It seeks to live in harmony with the Tao, a force that flows through all living things. They believe that there's this spiritual essence out there that is bigger and greater than them, and they're trying to reach a state of balance there and a place of equilibrium with this flowing energy all around. Well, what do they believe, Brother Easton? They believe, even though they're wrong, they should believe in God. They know that there is something else out there. There's something bigger. There is something that is better than them that they're trying to grasp and get a hold of. And to them, it is this Tao, this force that flows through all living things. Even Satanism believes in something bigger than us. Now, they are dead wrong. They're absolutely dead wrong, but why do they worship Satan? Because Satan is bigger and has more power than they do. In their mind, he is something that is higher than mankind, as wrong as they might be. Even if there was someone out there that didn't believe in anything other than being born and then dying, there is still something out there that controls them, that is bigger than them, that they must face and can do nothing about it, and it's called time. No matter where they sit, no matter what religion, no matter what camp, no matter what ideology everybody has, there is something and someone that is bigger and greater than mankind. The very thoughts that we have, the very desires of our heart is listed there in Romans. Our very nature has us to look to the point to where there is something. There is somebody else. We've talked about it before. You look at all of the ancient civilizations, there was something that they were worshiping. Now, they were wrong. They weren't worshiping God. They've worshiped Ra, the sun god. They've worshiped Nubius. They've worshiped the Philistines, worshiped Dagon. They've worshiped Molech. They've worshiped Baal. They've worshiped Balaam. They've worshiped everything under the sun. The Native Americans worshiped the Great Spirit. The Aztecs and the Mayans worshiped the sun and had human sacrifice and everything else. They were all worshiping something that they knew was greater than them. Even those men there on Mars Hill that built their altar to the unknown God, they knew that there was a God. They knew that there was somebody out there bigger and better than them. It was in their mind because their very thoughts were hardwired that way, couldn't get away from it. They knew there was something out there. They were all wrong on what it was, but they were right on the fact that there is something. There is someone bigger than us, and that someone is God. How can we prove the existence of God? Human nature. Just our own state of our mind, even what's happening there in the book of Romans, just the fact that mankind expects there to be something bigger and greater than them has to prove that there is a God. This fact proves the existence of God because in our very core, we know there is something greater than us. It's almost like this fact is in our subconscious and we can't do anything about it. It's just something we know from birth. I was thinking about Miss Charlie today as I was writing this. It doesn't matter how early or how late a baby is born. It does not matter their state necessarily. But when a baby is born, they know how to breathe. They might not be good at it, but they know how to move them little arms. They know how to kick. They learn how to kick and punch and everything else and roll over when they're in mama's belly and she's trying to sleep at night. Seems like they're cutting cartwheels and everything else. It's in them. They know how to move. They know how to breathe. When they're born, they know how to find that bottle. They know how to find the milk. They know how to find what they need. It's inside of them, and you can't do anything about it. It's built in. Mankind is the same way. I'm completely convinced sense that you could take somebody, kids that are 3 and 4 years old, and if you could isolate them out somewhere, they would eventually create their own hierarchy, and they would have something that they would worship. They would have something that they would follow. They would have something that they would go after, and they would say that it is bigger and better to them. It's just something that mankind cannot help but do. Every single one of them. The Native Americans were already worshiping something bigger than them before the Europeans ever brought the idea of God over here. It didn't come with Christopher Columbus. They already had the thought of the Great Spirit and something being above them. It doesn't matter. People can be left by themselves and they will still come up with something to worship, because at the basis of our core and our very nature, we expect and look for something that is above us to worship. So that's the psychological argument. The next one is the ontological argument. Spell ontological. Ontological argument. Now this one, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on if I can help it. It's deep, very deep. And personally, I'm just giving it to you because it's out there and I want you to at least know the term here. So bear with me. The ontological argument. This argument, at its base, essentially says that since mankind can think up or conceive the idea of a perfect God in their mind, that there must be a perfect God that exists. Just because we in our minds can conceive it and come up with it, because that idea is there, it must be true. And I know that sounds way out there. Give me a second, let me flesh it out and try to help us grasp it here. For instance, we know that God is omnipresent and omnipotent and omniscient. And since we in our minds can imagine a God with these attributes, He must exist. So I want to run a little thought experiment with us tonight. I'm going to see if I can't help prove what's going on here, this great thought exercise that they've got. I'm going to give you a word, and I want you to picture it in your mind, okay? So the first word is donkey. Donkey. Picture donkey in your mind. And I'm going to ask y'all what your donkey looks like. Rachel, what's your donkey look like in your mind? Mini horse, but gray, okay? When I thought of donkey, I thought about Donkey off Shrek, where my mind went. I've got a picture of it. I can see it. I know it's got 4 legs. I know that a donkey, if you look at its back, it's got a black striped mane that goes down, and it's got black stripes that come across its flanks there, and it makes a cross. It's pretty cool there. But anyways, I know what it looks like in my mind because it exists. Let me give you another one. How about a bridge? How about a bridge? Sue, what bridge are you thinking of? Tallahatchie River Bridge. I thought about the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. Great big old red bridge. We've got it in our mind. We know what a bridge looks like. We've got it pictured. We know what color it is. We know how big it is. We know what is driving over the top of it. We understand the bridge tonight. What about a fish? Brother Josh, what's your fish look like? About that big? I thought of the little Jesus fish, the little stick-drawn Jesus fish. He's got in his mind what a fish looks like. I got in my mind what a fish looks like. What about a barn? Brother Tim, what's your barn look like? A barn. Big old red barn with some white trim on it. The perfect photo picture of a barn. Your barn's supposed to be red. I don't know if that's in the Bible somewhere, but it ought to be. Barn should be red. That's what it looks like, right? We've got it in our mind. We can think about what it looks like. I got a few more of these. What about a football? Brother Kenneth, what's your football look like? Looks like a football. An out-of-shape basketball. An oblong basketball. It's got laces. It's got white stripes on the end of it. It's leather. It's the old pigskin. It's a football. We know what it looks like. What about an angel? What about an angel? Brother Ronnie, what's your angel look like? A man with some wings. Mine looks like a handsome man, because angels are good-looking beings supposedly, but a handsome-looking man, and I believe his wings are white feathered wings. That's what pops in my mind when I think about an angel. What about God? When I say God, what is your picture? What is your description of God? I'm going to give the hardest one to Brother Dennis. What's your description of God? What does God look like in your mind? A great old man. When I think of God, I think about that great bright white light there that Paul saw on the road to Damascus, and for some reason, I hear the voice of James Earl Jones. You know what I'm talking about? The guy that plays on Sandlot. That's just, to me, that's the voice of God. Him or Morgan Freeman one. They just sound like that. We can get in our mind a picture of all of these things. Now, let me give you one more word, and I want you to picture it. The word is ukni, an ukni. What does an ukni look like? Anybody know? Anybody want to cast out there? Miss Sheila, what's an ukni look like? Anybody else? You know what ukni is? Anybody else? Nobody can picture an ukni. All right, well, let me give you my description of an ukni. An ukni is a word that I made up for the sermon. You can't picture an ukni because there is no such thing. There is no such thing. But you could picture God, right? And because you could picture God, that must mean there was something out there that gave you the idea of God. Something that proved the existence of God because you could realize that God is there. That is the most simple, basic way that I can explain this ontology argument. Gets deep, right? It says just because in our mind we can grasp, we can understand, we can think about God and who He is and His nature and what He probably looks like or what we think He looks like and how that He is and how that He behaves and all that He does. Since we can grasp all of that, it must mean that there is really something out there that is like that. That's a deep, deep, deep theological thought process, ain't it? Pretty tough. So the simplified argument goes that since we can picture God in our mind, we can think about and grasp the idea of a perfect God, that He must exist. That's the argument of the ontological argument. Now let's get on to the fun stuff that I was looking to. Your point number 2, here's another way that we can prove and look at the existence of God, and it's through the written Word. Through the written Word of God. It proves His existence. It helps us realize who He is and how that He is. Everything that we know about God comes out of His Word. Every attribute that He has, every clue we have as to what He looks like or what He sounds like or how He functions, all of that comes out of the written Word. The Bible that He has given us, that He's inspired and preserved for us, everything we have is coming from this thing about God. You'll see here the written Word, and that next blank is the nature of God. The nature of God helps to prove His existence. It helps to show us how He is. Now, by the nature of God, it is meant how God exists. What is God's body like? How does He work? What does He do? This is what it means by the nature of God. So what is God? What does He actually consist of? John 4, verse number 24 says, God is a spirit, and they that worship Him must worship Him in spirit and in truth. So God's a spirit. It's the state of matter that He exists in. So I'll give you some verses here in a minute to help us understand that. The Bible teaches that God does not necessarily have a physical body. So the way that my mind helps me wrap around this and understand this is I put it back to 3 states of matter. What are the 3 states of matter that we learned in science class? Solid, liquid, gas. Right? Solid, liquid, gas. So if God is going to exist, now this has got some gaps in it, okay? So don't think that I'm giving you the best definition, but this works for me. And I'm hoping it works for you. If not, I got this from Sue. She's the one who wrote this song. But anyways, one person called that. One person. All right, so 3 states of matter. God is not a solid because He's not in a fixed position like a statue or something that cannot move. God can move. God can work where He needs to. God is not a solid. God is not a liquid tonight. God is not a liquid because God is able to move around like what liquid can, but He's not stuck in one position. He's not stuck right there in that pool of water or that cup of liquid or whatever it is. He's not put into a box. He's not held. He has no restrictions on Him. So the way I picture it is God is more like a gas. He's more like He's in the state of matter of gas. He can move around. He can slip through cracks to get into rooms. He can go where He needs to go. He can spread as far as He needs to spread. He can condense Himself down to where He has a picture or an image that people can see and look at. And I'll give you some verses here in a minute to prove that. But think about that in your mind. God is a spirit. He does not have a physical body. And I know as soon as I said that, a lot of people probably think, well, it talks about the hands of God. And Moses saw the hinder parts of God on Mount Sinai. I'm going to get to it and I'm going to help us understand it. He is a spirit. He is a spirit. He's a being that has no defined shape. He has no defined limit or size. He is whatever He needs to be. You can't put Him in a box. You can't restrict Him down. That's what it was always told to us when it describes a state of matter of gas. It did what it wanted to do. It spread out. It went where it wanted to go. And that's the best way that I can think of God. So let me give you them verses I was talking about. In the very beginning of this thing, in Genesis chapter 1, verse number 2, it says, "And the earth was out form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters." What about God walking through the garden? Surely to goodness He had a physical body, because it says that He was walking through the garden. Genesis 3:8. "And they," Adam and Eve, "they heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden." He did not have a body. Him and His spiritual form, His spirit self, is moving through the garden, and they heard His voice. They didn't see Him. They never went up to Him like that. It says that His voice, they heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves in the presence of the Lord God amongst the trees of the garden. Well, what about Moses and the burning bush? Well, what about Moses and the burning bush? How did the Lord appear to Moses? He wasn't some man sitting on the side of the road when Moses walked by and said, "Come on over here." What was he in? He was in a burning bush. There was no body in the burning bush. Moses looked at it. He saw that the bush was on fire, but it was not consumed. There was no physical body of God there. It was His Spirit. It was the glory of God that was sitting there in that fire, in that bush, and He was called out to Moses and told him to come on by. Exodus 3:2. "And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed." Well, what about Moses on Sinai? Did he not see God's body? Did he not see the hinder parts of God when he came by? Exodus 33:22 says this, "And it shall come to pass, while my glory passes by," not my body, "while my glory passes by, that I will put thee in the cleft of the rock, and will cover thee with my hand while I pass by." It was the glory of God. It was not some defined body that necessarily looks like us. It was just God's glory as He went by through there. I'll give you some more. What about God appearing as a pillar of fire and a pillar of cloud? As He was leading those Israelites through the wilderness and across the Red Sea and all of that, it tells us in Exodus 13:21, "And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them the way, and by night in a pillar of fire." It wasn't His body. He turned into a great pillar of cloud and a great pillar of fire. He was not restricted by what shape He could take on. He was in the shape of a pillar of fire or cloud. Exodus 14:20. Let me move back. What about God getting between the Israelites and the Egyptians at the Red Sea? You remember, God has led them to the edge of the Red Sea. He tells them to camp there. He's fixing to tell Moses to hold the rod up and head across the Red Sea. But when that is going on, the Pharaoh and the Egyptians have come over the top of the ridge or whatever, and they see them down there. And it says in verse number 19, Exodus 14:19, "And the angel of God, which went before the camp of Israel," he's still in the pillar of a cloud right here, says he went behind them, and the pillar of the cloud went from before their face and stood behind them. God is a pillar of cloud that has led them to the Red Sea, but now that the Egyptians are coming, He has changed, He has moved down, and He has become a cloud or a great fog here that has kept them from finding one another. Verse 20 says, "He came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel, and it was a cloud and darkness to them. But it gave light by night to these, so that one came not near the other all the night." God, as His Spirit form and self, has moved down, and He has surrounded this army of Egypt here. He has made it darkness to them, but the other side of His being, the other side of His Spirit is now light, and now one side can see and one side cannot see. He is a Spirit. What about the presence of God moving into the tabernacle? That's one of your blanks. Exodus 40, verse 34 says this. They've dedicated the tabernacle. They got everything set up. It's ready to go. It says, "Then a cloud covered the tent of the congregation, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle." The Spirit of God has moved in to the tabernacle, and He has filled the tabernacle full of His presence, full of His glory. Verse 35. And Moses was not able to enter into the tent of the congregation because the cloud abode thereon, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And when the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the children of Israel went onward in their journeys. But if the cloud were not taken up, then they journeyed not till that day that it was taken up. For the cloud of the Lord was upon the tabernacle by day, and fire was on it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel throughout all their journeys. He has a spiritual form. The presence of God resting on the ark of the covenant. Exodus 25:22. And there I will meet with thee, and I will commune with thee from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubims which are upon the ark of the testimony, of all things which I will give thee in commandment unto the children of Israel. God, its physical body, is not sitting on top of the ark of the covenant. The glory and the Spirit of God is sitting in the midst between those cherubims there. Not a physical form here. It's His Spirit. It's His glory that is sitting there. What about Paul on the Damascus road? God appearing as a bright light to Saul on the road to Damascus. And as he journeyed, Acts 9:3, as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined around about him a light from heaven. And he fell to the earth and heard a voice saying unto him, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? And he said, Who art thou, Lord? And the Lord said, I am Jesus whom thou persecutest. It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks. It is the very Spirit, the very being of God and Jesus here. He has manifested Himself in a bright light. He is a spiritual body. That's why we say that when God sent Jesus to the earth, He sent Himself. He became God in the flesh. We can't say that Jesus has become God in the flesh if God was already God in the flesh. Does that make sense tonight? I know that's deep and I know that's kind of hard, and sometimes it's a lot to wrap your head around. But God does not have a fleshly, physical body. That's why Jesus came to become God in the flesh to then die on the cross for us. God is a spirit. That's what the Bible teaches. That's what He shows us. Now, I get some of these instances He may appear in a more solid form so that the human senses can interact with Him. But the Bible clearly teaches that God is a spirit. His nature, He's a spirit. And then I want you to look lastly tonight at the names of God. The names of God. I'm excited about these. I like these. Now, there's a bunch of them in here, and they're in Hebrew. My Hebrew's rusty. I don't know Hebrew very well, so I'm not going to read all of them. I'll put them on there for you, but I do want to read the descriptions of them out to the side so we can look at all of these. He's known as Jehovah. I will be that I will be. He is what He is. I am what I am. What is that Moses asked? Said, well, what am I supposed to tell everybody when they say, who sent me? He said, tell them I am. Tell them I am sent you. So I am. I will be that I will be. God is God. There's nothing else. He's always been. He's always going to be. I will be that I will be. The second one, it means to be strong. It has power, and it's mighty. If that doesn't describe our God, I don't know what does. Elohim is the third one. It's the plural form suggesting the Trinity. You'll find it, the very first illustration, the very first time that God is listed in the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, verse number 1, in the beginning, God created the plural form of God. Well, who is it? Is it multiple gods? No. It is the triune God. It is the Trinity. It's the Godhead. It was Jesus was there, the Holy Ghost was there, and God was there all the way at the beginning. That's why when your Bible says that He was the Lamb slain before the foundation of the world, He's pointing all the way back to Jesus being there alongside of God, all the way back in Genesis 1:1. He wasn't a backup plan. He wasn't an audible. He was something that was the plan all the way through. God already knew what was going to happen. That's why He was there. What was God doing in Genesis 1:1? He was laying the foundations of the world, and the Bible tells us that He was the Lamb slain before the foundations of the world. So if the foundations were laid in Genesis 1:1, then when you see God there, Elohim, the plural version of God, there in Genesis 1:1, Jesus was there. He was already there. He was already set up. It was already the plan unto salvation. It's the Trinity. The fourth one means the Most High God. The fifth one is the living God. Then you have the faithful God. Then you got Almighty God. You've got everlasting God. Then you got some more that all begin with Jehovah. These go more describing kind of what God is doing here. The first one is Lord God, and He is Lord of Lords and King of Kings, is He not? Lord God. Number 10, the Lord will provide. He does that, don't He? Ain't you glad that He provides for us? Aren't you glad that you don't have to go hungry, that you don't have to go thirsty when you're out in a dry and thirsty land? When the children of Israel were coming across that wilderness, as ungrateful as they were, as much of a complaining spirit that they had, God still provided for them. He still gave them manna. He still gave them water. He still gave them quail when manna wasn't enough. Can you imagine being that spoiled to where you looked at the very bread of heaven, angels' food that God made, created a recipe just for you, only fell on you, fell on nobody else, gave it to you every single day because it was fresh, told you not to store it up, told you not to hold it to the next day because it would spoil on you, and it sure did. If they kept it overnight, it had worms and mold and everything else on it. They had to gather it fresh every morning. He didn't just give them a loaf of Wonder Bread or that Lewis bread that lasts for 6 years now. He didn't give them none of that stuff. He gave them manna fresh every single morning, provided for them. Can you imagine God giving you that, providing for you that well, and you still look up at Him and say, well, I wanted meat instead. And He looked at them, and instead of getting mad at them and saying, you get what you get, don't pitch a fit, He looked at them and said, all right, I'll give you quail. I'm going to give you so much quail, you're going to be sick of quail. He provided for them, did He not? He gave them more than they could deserve, more they could hold on to, more than they could take, and that's exactly what He's done for us in our life. He has filled us up so much that we're bursting at the seams because He's so good to us. God will provide. The Lord will provide. The 11th one there. The Lord that healeth thee. The Lord our banner. That Jehovah Nissi there, number 12. One of my favorite texts in the whole Bible. If you want to go look at it, it's Exodus chapter number 17, a real famous story. You'll find a little man by the name of Moses up on top of a rock. You'll find a little man by the name of Joshua down there in the valley. He's fighting a great big old army of the Amalekites, and Moses is doing something up there on that hill. Anybody know what he's doing? He's saying touchdown. He's got his hands up in the air. They're fighting down there. He realizes when his arms get tired and he begins to drop them arms that Joshua and all of the men of Israel begin to lose. He realizes that and he goes, oh, and he sticks his hands back up and they begin to win again. And there's another little man that comes up on one side by the name of Hur and another man on the other side by the name of Aaron. By the way, if you ever want to know what the world Hur was doing up there, I don't know what he's doing there, but I do know that you don't hear nothing else about Hur for a little while. But all of a sudden, when they get ready to build the tabernacle, go back and look, and you'll find it's one of Hur's descendants that God has blessed with the talents and gives him the ability to go and to build on the tabernacle. So what Hur did just by holding up some arms every once in a while, God saw that, God blessed that, God rewarded that, and even generations later, God still had His hand on Hur's family because of what Hur had already done. But you'll find they're sitting there and they're holding up the hands of Moses, and they go on, and Joshua down there whips up on them Amalekites, and then all of a sudden they go up there and they build an altar on that hill, and they call that place Jehovah Nissi, and it means the Lord is our banner. You know what they did? They saw that God gave them the battle, and just like those men did there on that island over in the Pacific, in the South Pacific out there in World War II, when they had that famous picture of all them soldiers trying to lift that flag up there on top of that volcano where they were fighting, when he put that altar up there and called it the Lord our banner, it's like he took the flag of God and he planted it right there on top of that and said, right here is where God gave the victory, is where God delivered us, is where God saved us, is where God helped us. And now every time they look at that and they think of it called Jehovah Nissi, hey, that's where God flew His victory flag over those Amalekites. He's God, the Lord, our banner. We ought to fly some banners in our life. There ought to be some places we can brag about and say, look what God did back there. Let me wave my flag for Him. He's done so good. The Lord, our banner. The 13th, Jehovah Shalom, the Lord our peace. The Lord is my shepherd. The Lord our righteousness. The Lord of hosts. That last blank, the Lord is present. Aren't you glad He's present in your life? Aren't you glad that He's present in your life? When you feel like nobody else understands and you're all alone, you got no hope, you've got no help, you feel like you're doing it all by yourself and nobody even cares about what you're going on. I told them youth kids at Locust Grove, I said you've had one of them days where all you want to do is go home and grab the pillow and bury your head in it and just scream as loud as you can because you think that'll help everything. When you're having one of those no good, not so good, terrible days or however that goes, when you realize that you need some help, aren't you glad that God is still present? That God has not left. That God has not left you nor forsaken you. He is still there in the midst. The Lord is present. Then you'll find Lord God, And then number 19, you'll find Father. Means Father. These names can all be summed up in one title. That title is God. God. When we say the name of God, we're covering every one of these titles. It's not that God chooses what hat to wear that day. It's not that He's just doing one thing that day and that's all He is for that given day. When these titles were given to God, it wasn't to show Him wearing just that one title, but it was to highlight what specifically He was doing in that situation. When they called that altar Jehovah Nissi and they said that God's banner, the Lord is our banner, was placed right there, they weren't trying to signify that that's all God is as a symbol. They were just trying to say that in that scenario and what God did in Exodus 17 is He delivered us from a great victory, and now we get to wave that flag there, that banner that God represents, or that banner that represents God. That's the hat that God was wearing there, but that doesn't make Him any less God on any other thing. I got this little illustration here that maybe will help us. For instance, I have many titles that I can go by. To Sue, I'm her spouse. To my kids, I am their father. To Trey, I am his brother. I started to ask him, say, Trey, what am I to you? But I was scared he was going to say stupid or something like that. So I just left that one alone. Figured I wouldn't give him the opportunity to get me. He is my brother. To my daddy, I am his son. To my mother, I am her son. To my cousins, I am their cousin. To my brother-in-laws, I am a brother-in-law. To MDOT, I'm an engineer and a manager of the office. To the Lord, I'm a preacher. To Beulah, I am the pastor. To those, and I do have some of these, I am a friend to some people. To some people that I work with, I am their co-worker. I wear a whole lot of hats here in the church. I wear a lot of hats in life. All these titles can be summed up, but just by saying my name, Easton. It applies to all of them. Who is Easton to you? Well, it depends on what his function is at the time. But different titles may apply to different people at different times. To Trey, my title as father does not apply because I am not his father. But just because to Trey I am not father doesn't mean that I'm not father to Nate. Just because God might be present in one person's life doesn't mean that He's not mighty and powerful in somebody else's life. Does that make sense? Just because we use one name or use one title in the text doesn't make Him any less of the rest of them. Just because my wife calls me her husband, just because she calls me her husband, doesn't mean that I'm not Kyle's brother-in-law or Bill or Dalton's brother-in-law. It doesn't mean that this title over here don't matter because somebody else is calling me husband over here to the side. It just means that to that person, that's what I am. To some people, God is mighty. Some people, He's faithful. To some people, He's providing. Some people, He's giving peace. Some people, He's righteousness. Some people, He's present in their life. But just because we only see one title doesn't make the other ones not apply. They always apply. God is not taking one hat off after another and going and saying, oh, well, today I've got to be a deliverer over here. Oh, today I've got to be full of grace over here. Oh, today I got to show mercy over here. Oh, over here I've got to be King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Oh, over here I've got to be a great vengeful God. He's not doing that. He's not swapping back and forth for what He is. What these titles are saying is not that God is doing a multitude of different jobs, but it's saying that God is made up of all of these things. He is not just one thing. He is multiple things. He is gracious. He is merciful. He is present in our lives. He is almighty. He is omnipotent. He is omniscient. He is all of these things, and they're all wrapped into one great big old title called God. You can't put God in a box. Everything He is can all be summed up in that one name, God. You get all these titles and all these functions all in one name. The psalmist had it right. Psalmist had it right. If you got your notes, I added something in this verse to help us grasp it. Psalms 9:10 says this, and they that know Thy name, the parentheses is me, all that Thou art, will put their trust in Thee, for Thou, Lord, has not forsaken them that seek Thee. And they that know Thy name. What do you know when you know the name of God? You don't just know that it's the God that created the world. You don't just know that it was a God that sent His Son down the cross for you. You don't just know that it's God that's present or God that's almighty or God that has grace or God that has mercy or God that so loved the world. You don't just know one of those things. No. When you hear the name of God, you get them all. You get all of them. You get every attribute He's got. You got every name. You got everything that He's ever done. You get them all. That's why the psalmist says, and they that know Thy name. When they really grasp and get a hold of everything that you are, they'll put their trust in me. When they realize everything that you can do, for thou, Lord, has not forsaken them that seek thee. When you realize just how many accolades he's got by his name, when you realize just all he is and all that he's done, you can't help but to trust him. And then lastly tonight, Proverbs 18:10. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous runneth into it and is safe. I've always kind of wondered about that verse. But when you realize that little placeholder, the name of the Lord, when you realize that name right there represents that great big old whole list and many more that I didn't even give you, when you realize the depth and the strength that that name has got, you can't help. You can't help but realize that's a good place to go, a good place to seek refuge. Brother Josh, you come on the piano tonight. I thought about this just a second ago. How powerful, how wonderful is the name of God. Well, you remember what Jesus did in the garden? Judas has gone out and betrayed him. He's led those people back in. They walked in the garden, said, we're looking for Jesus of Nazareth. And Jesus said, that's me. As soon as he said it, it blew the people back off their feet. The very name had power in it. The very name of our Lord holds so much tonight. Let's all stand tonight as he plays.